that will give you great power. An ordinary appearance spiced by a touch of divine madness is more shocking and alarming than an out-and-out crazy person. Remember, your madness, like Hamlet's, must be strategic. Real madness is all too predictable. 5. In April 1917, New York's Society of Independent Artists prepared for its first exhibition. This was to be a grand showcase of modern art, the largest in the United States to date. The exhibition was open to any artist who would join the society, whose dues were minimal, and the response had been overwhelming, with over 1,200 artists contributing over 2,000 pieces. The Society's board of directors included collectors like Walter Arensberg and artists like Man Ray and the 29-year-old Marcel Duchamp, a Frenchman then living in New York. It was Duchamp, as head of the hanging committee, who decided to make the exhibition radically democratic. He hung the works in alphabetical order, beginning with a letter drawn from a hat. The system led to cubist still lifes being hung next to traditional landscapes, amateur photographs, and the occasional lewd work by someone apparently insane. Some of the organizers loved this plan, others were disgusted and quit. A few days after the exhibition was to open, the Society received the strangest work so far: a urinal mounted on its back with the words R. Mutt, 1917, painted in large black letters on its rim. The work was called Fountain, and it was apparently submitted by a Mr. Mutt, along with the requisite membership fee. In viewing the piece for the first time, the painter George Bellows, a member of the Society's board, claimed it was indecent and that the Society could not exhibit it. Arensberg disagreed. He said he could discern an interesting work of art in its shape and presentation. "This is what the whole exhibit is about," he told Bellows, "an opportunity to allow the artist to send in anything he chooses, for the artist to decide what is art, not someone else." Bellows was unmoved. Hours before the exhibition opened, the board met and voted by a slim margin not to show the piece. Arensberg and Duchamp immediately resigned. In newspaper articles reporting this controversy, the object was politely referred to as a bathroom fixture. It piqued a lot of curiosity, and an air of mystery pervaded the entire affair. At the time of the exhibition, Duchamp was one of a group of artists who published a magazine called The Blind Man. The magazine's second issue included a photograph of Fountain taken by the great photographer Alfred Stieglitz, who lit the urinal beautifully so that a shadow fell over it like a kind of veil, giving it a slightly religious appearance, along with something vaguely sexual in the arguably vaginal shape of the urinal when laid on its back. The Blind Man also ran an editorial, The Richard Mutt Case, that defended the work and criticized its exclusion from the show. Mr. Mutt's fountain is not immoral, no more than a bathtub is immoral. Whether Mr. Mutt, with his own hands, made the fountain or not has no importance. He chose it. He took an ordinary article of life, placed it so that its useful significance disappeared under the new title and point of view, created a new thought for that object. It soon became clear that the creator of Fountain was none other than Duchamp. And over the years, the work began to assume a life of its own, even though it mysteriously disappeared from Stieglitz's studio and was never found again. For some reason, the photograph and the story of Fountain inspired endless ideas about art and art-making. The work itself had strange powers to shock and compel. In 1953, the Sidney Janis Gallery, New York, was authorized by Duchamp to exhibit a replica of Fountain over its entrance door, a sprig of mistletoe emerging from the bowl. Soon, more replicas were appearing in galleries, retrospective exhibitions of Duchamp's work, and museum collections. Fountain became a fetish object, something to collect. Replicas of it have sold for over $1 million. Everyone seems to see what they want to see in the piece. Shown in museums, it often still outrages the public, some disturbed by the urinal itself, others by its presentation as art. Critics have written extended articles on the urinal with all kinds of interpretations. In staging Fountain, Duchamp was urinating on the art world. He was playing with notions of gender. The piece is an elaborate verbal pun, on and on. What some of the organizers of the 1917 show believed to be merely an indecent object unworthy of being considered art has somehow turned into one of the most controversial, scandalous, and analyzed works of the 20th century. Interpretation. Throughout the 20th century, many artists wielded influence by being unconventional. The Dadaists, the Surrealists, Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, the list is long. But of all of them, it is Marcel Duchamp who has probably had the greatest impact on modern art, and what he calls his ready-mades are perhaps the most influential of all his works. The ready-mades are everyday objects, sometimes exactly as they were made, a snow shovel, a bottle rack, sometimes slightly altered, the urinal laid on its back, the mustache and goatee drawn on a reproduction of the Mona Lisa. Chosen by the artist and then placed in a gallery or museum. Duchamp was giving the ideas of art priority over its images. His ready-mades, banal and uninteresting in themselves, inspired all kinds of associations, questions, and interpretations. A urinal may be a seedy commonplace, but to present it as art was utterly unconventional and stirred up angry, irritating, delirious ideas. Understand, in war, politics, and culture, what is unconventional, whether it is Hannibal's elephants and oxen or Duchamp's urinal, is never material, or rather it is never just material. The unconventional can only arise out of the mind. Something surprises is not what we expected. We usually base our expectations on familiar conventions, cliches, habits of seeing, the ordinary. Many artists, writers, and other producers of culture seem to believe at the height of unconventionality to create images, texts, and other works that are merely weird, startling, or shocking in some way. These works may generate a momentary splash, but they have none of the power of the unconventional and extraordinary, because they have no context to rub against. They do not work against our expectations. No more than strange, they quickly fade from memory. When striving to create the extraordinary, always remember, what is crucial is the mental process, not the image or maneuver itself. What will truly shock and linger long in the mind are those works and ideas that grow out of the soil of the ordinary and banal, that are unexpected, that make us question and contest the very nature of the reality we see around us. Most definitely in art, the unconventional can only be strategic. Reversal. There is never any value in attacking opponents from a direction or in a way that they expect, allowing them to stiffen their resistance. That is, unless your strategy is suicide. Here are further reflections on the ordinary-extraordinary strategy. By Frederick the Great. Everything which the enemy least expects will succeed the best. If he relies for security on a chain of mountains that he believes impracticable, and you pass these mountains by roads unknown to him, he is confused to start with. And if you press him, he will not have time to recover from his consternation. In the same way, if he places himself behind a river to defend the crossing, and you find some ford above or below on which to cross unknown to him, this surprise will derange and confuse him.